Thousands in London and many across the world are bidding farewell to Queen Elizabeth II. The Queen's coffin is being driven to Windsor. The procession is being led by Royal Canadian Mounted Police and is made of 7 groups, each with its own band. The King and members of the armed services from the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth, along with the police and the NHS, are also involved. In minutes from now, the day's third and final procession will begin through the grounds of Windsor Castle to St. George's Chapel, which is where the Queen will be laid to rest with her late husband, the Duke of Edinburgh. The castle, continuously inhabited by 40 monarchs across almost 1,000 years, had special significance to the Queen throughout her life. As a teenager, she was sent to the castle during the war as London faced the threat of bombing, and more recently she made it her permanent home during the coronavirus pandemic. The King and senior members of the royal family are expected to join the cortege in the quadrangle in Windsor Castle shortly. The castle's Sebastopol and curfew tower bells will be tolled every minute, and gun salutes will be fired from the castle's grounds. Then the coffin will enter St. George's Chapel for committal service. Earlier, state funeral concluded at the Westminster Abbey. Scores of heads of state, dignitaries and celebrities joined in mourning. Many hymns from the psalm were sung throughout the ceremony. One was from the wedding of then Princess Elizabeth and Philip Mountbatten in 1947. The coffin has arrived at Windsor Castle, as you can see on your screens right now. This is after an elaborate and somber procession through London. Earlier today, her state funeral was held at Westminster Abbey, the building in which the Queen was married and also crowned. Her coffin will be transported to St. George's Chapel on foot at Windsor Castle. The Queen will be buried together with her late husband, Prince Philip, at the King George VI Memorial Chapel, which is located outside St. George's Chapel. We are made to understand that her marble slab has been engraved with the words Elizabeth II, 1926 to 2022. This is live at Windsor Castle. The coffin carrying the remains of the late Queen Elizabeth II has arrived at Windsor Castle, and now this is another procession to St. George's Chapel before her body is interred. Our London correspondent Alex Izsatt is standing by live. Hi Alex, we do understand that the coffin has now reached the final stretch, which is Windsor Castle. Many Londoners lined up the path where the procession was held. The mourning period is over. From tomorrow it's back to business. What can you tell us about this?
Absolutely. I think everyone will be able to pay their respects today, and as you rightly say, there is another committal ceremony that's going to happen later this afternoon before the Queen is interred. and she will be able to have another ceremony as well with her family to pay their respects without having that televised. But then the rest of the country will be going back to normal. We've got a lot of things to confront as we head forward into the rest of the year. We still have a cost of living crisis. That hasn't gone anywhere. We still have a new parliament and Liz Truss and all of her cabinet members. And there are a few things that we're expecting this coming week, and that is to get a mini budget. What we may see is that a lot of businesses will get an energy cap tariff. So that's a lot of money that's going to be borrowed, loans potentially. So we may see billions of pounds of money coming in to the government from loans. And that should be something that many people are going to be concerned about, because we hit into winter, about heating costs. So we should get a lot more information this coming week as Parliament heads back and as the mini budget is announced.
Alex, stay with me because I want to tell our viewers what is currently happening. In some time, the coffin will enter St. George's Chapel for a committal service, like Alex said there. St. George's Chapel is a church regularly chosen by the royal family for weddings, christenings and funerals. It is where the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Prince Harry and Meghan, were married in 2018, and where the Queen's late husband, Prince Philip's funeral was also held. Attended by a smaller, more personal congregation of about 800 guests, the committal service will be conducted by Dean of Windsor, David Corner, with a blessing from Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby. The service, whose congregation will be largely made up of current and former staff from the Queen's household and private estates, will include traditions symbolizing the end of her reign. The imperial state crown and the sovereign's orb and scepter will be removed from the top of the coffin by the crown jeweler, separating the Queen from her crown for the final time. Now, at the end of the last hymn, the King will then place the Queen's company camp colour or flag of the Grenadier Guards on the coffin. The Grenadier Guards are the most senior of the foot guards carrying out ceremonial duties for the monarch. Now, at the same time, the Lord Chamberlain, former M15 Chief Baron Parker, will break his wand of office and place it on the coffin. The snapping of the white staff will signal the end of his service to the sovereign as her most senior official in the royal household. The Queen will then be lowered into the royal vault, and the sovereign's piper will play before a blessing and the singing of God Save the King. The performance by the piper at Windsor was something the Queen had personally requested. And this is according to Buckingham Palace. When the committal service comes to an end and the King and members of the royal family leave the chapel, later in the evening at a private family service, the Queen will be buried together with her late husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, at the King George VI Memorial Chapel, located inside St. George's Chapel. Her marble slab has been engraved these words: Elizabeth II, 1926 to 2022. This is live in Windsor. Our London correspondent Alex Izsatt is still with us. Thank you, Alex, for staying on. The Queen died while still on the throne, and her interment is and will be different from other royals. What's the symbolism and significance of this final procession and the interment?
As we've been hearing all day, this really is a traditional funeral that the Queen herself played a part in organising. It has been organised for many years as something that was going to be a huge operation, expected with security, with who is going to come and dignitaries. So this has been in place for quite a while. Obviously today is a huge national day of mourning. A lot of people have had the day off to pay their respects and to think on about all of the times that they may have seen the Queen or she has been a part of their life. She has been around an awfully long time, and most of us only know her as the Queen and has only had one Queen in our lifetime. So it is a huge significance that we're also having this time to say goodbye to her. This huge ceremony really shows what the nation can do when brought together. We're seeing a lot of the guards, we're seeing the army, the navy, the Royal Air Force all coming together and showing their standards. They're showing their groups off, and it's just bringing all of those aspects of what the UK means together to say goodbye to this amazing woman.
Indeed, this is a significant moment for the world. The end of the second Elizabethan era. St. George's Chapel is a church regularly chosen by the royal family for weddings, christenings and funerals. It is where the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Prince Harry and Meghan, were married in 2018, and where the Queen's late husband, Prince Philip's funeral was held. As you can see from your screens there, the procession is still ongoing. This is the final round or the final stretch of the procession at Windsor Castle. It's a long stretch where the Queen's coffin will pass through this path until her interment. Now, attended by a smaller, more personal congregation of about 800 guests, the committal service will be conducted by Dean of Windsor, David Connor, with a blessing from Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby. The service, whose congregation will be largely made up of current and former staff from the Queen's household and private estates, will include traditions symbolizing the end of her reign. She was the longest reigning monarch in history. The imperial state crown and the sovereign's orb and scepter will be removed from the top of the coffin by the crown jeweler, separating the Queen from her crown for the final time. At the end of the last hem, the King will then place the Queen's company camp colour or flag of the Grenadier Guards on the coffin. The Grenadier Guards are the most senior of the foot guards carrying out ceremonial duties for the monarch. At the same time, the Lord Chamberlain, former M15 Chief Baron Parker, will break his wand of office and place it on the coffin. The snapping of the white staff will signal the end of his service to the sovereign as our most senior official in the royal household. Our London correspondent Alex Izsatt is still with us. Alex, thank you very much for staying on. Are there any other ceremonies that have been arranged for the public at this moment that we do not know of and now you can tell us about?
No, this has been the last one, the committal ceremony for the public, which will be televised, of course, for the Queen. For Queen Elizabeth II. We will be expecting in the future to have a televised ceremony for King Charles for his coronation to become King Charles III. But we're not expecting that until the spring or summer next year, and in fact he could actually continue having it even longer, so it could well be into the year after. So that's the next big procession that we're planning on seeing, but a lot of change is likely to happen in that meantime as King Charles III takes on the crown and does a lot more, making sure that he is making a standpoint to his own monarchy. So I think he's going to be looking to make the Commonwealth a bit more stronger, and he's probably going to try and get down the amount of royals that are currently on the public purse.
Alex, there was skepticism about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Do we know if they are part of the royal family which is attending this final procession?
I think there's been a lot, obviously, talk about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, but we shouldn't forget that this is a day to celebrate the Queen and what she stood for, and all of the years that she was in charge and she was leading the country as our constitutional monarch. So it is mostly about her and what she has left in a lot of people's hearts. I think today generally was a time for people to reminisce and think on about all of those things that she's done throughout their lives, and to be able to say goodbye to her. Who may attend the ceremony at St George's Chapel, although we're probably expecting to have all of King Charles's close family, which does include Prince Harry. It shouldn't be forgotten that this day is about the Queen.
Indeed, it's about the Queen. Have you managed to speak to, Londoners or Britons? What are they saying? What will they remember about their Queen?
Yeah, a lot of people are saying the same thing. This figurehead has been there throughout their whole lives. She's on our coins, on our notes, she's everywhere. So it's been the most consistent part of most people's lives has been Queen Elizabeth II. So it is a huge shock, even though she was obviously 96 and a lot of people were expecting one day she may pass. It didn't seem quite real to a lot of people that she was one moment shaking hands with the new Prime Minister, Liz Truss, and the next moment she'd passed. A lot of people I'd spoken to suggested that when they'd heard that she'd passed, there was a huge shock and sadness within, one that they couldn't quite describe, as seeing possibly like a family member or a granny going as well. So that kind of emotion has been quite strong, and you've seen that a lot with a lot of the crowds, a lot of tears out there, a lot of silent tributes, people just wanting to pay their respects.
Alex Izsatt is our correspondent in London. Stay with me. Let me just brief our viewers on what is happening on your screens right now. This is live at Windsor Castle, the final procession for the late Queen Elizabeth II, what they're calling a committal service. Now the Queen will then be lowered into the royal vault, and the sovereign's piper will play before a blessing and the singing of God Save the King. Now the performance by the piper at Windsor was something the Queen had personally requested, and this is according to Buckingham Palace. Now when the committal service comes to an end and the King and members of the royal family will leave the chapel, later in the evening, at a private family service, the Queen will be buried together with her late husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, at the King George VI Memorial Chapel located inside St. George's Chapel. Her marble slab will be engraved the words Elizabeth II, 1926, to 2022. This coverage continues. You are watching WION World is One. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.